Based on everything I heard about this movie before seeing it, and now that I have seen it for myself, my biggest takeaway is that the filmmakers clearly wanted to tell a story that makes the audience question everything. Mission accomplished. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?
Heretic follows two young missionaries who become ensnared in a deadly game of cat and mouse when they knock on the door of the diabolical Mr. Reed. Trapped in his house, they must turn to their faith if they want to make it out alive. Before I get into my thoughts on the film itself, major props are in order for the directors and A24. And they deserve their props for taking a stance that modern creators typically don't have the balls to do. The end credits of this film has a message that says, no generative AI was used in the making of this film. I believe this is in fact the first time a message like that was included in the final credits. The directors are quoted as saying it was important for us to put that out there because we think it's something people need to start thinking about. With the rise of AI technology, especially in the entertainment industry, I think it's refreshing to see filmmakers actively talk about the negative effects technology like that has on creativity. Listen, I'm not totally against AI. I think there's a place for it, especially when it comes to independent creators who don't have the resources to bring their vision to life. But when Hollywood does it, it feels quite different, because they don't have the excuse of limited resources. It just comes off as lazy.
Put some effort into it!
Most of us go to the movies to see a real, living human being's creative vision. What we don't want to see is something soullessly regurgitated from an algorithm. To me, it's just impersonal and uninteresting. I think this movie deserves people's support just for its stance on AI alone, and its refusal to go along with the industry's newest, most harmful trend. Speaking of challenging things, while the filmmakers were challenging the concept of AI in the real world, in the movie, this story is all about challenging the ideologies associated with religion. Now, that is sure to be a controversial topic to some, but here's the thing about asking questions. Even if you don't agree with those questions or the rationale behind asking them, to me, if they are asked in the right way, they should still inspire some thought. And to me, that is exactly what a movie like Heretic is doing a great job of.
That makes sense.
There is a lot of deep philosophical ideas in this movie about religion, death, and control. If you don't walk out of this movie at least partially questioning your own existence and purpose in life, then I would be surprised. In typical A24 fashion, this is more of a thinking man's horror film. Actually, the more that I think about it, this movie is less of a horror film and more of a psychological thriller. So I guess you could say that the trailers were a bit misleading in that aspect. This movie is definitely not what I thought it was going to be, but all things considered, I think I'm okay with that. That's not to say that there aren't horror elements contained within the film, because let's be real, this is a horrific situation that these girls are placed in. And the movie does have its fair share of violence more towards the third act, but I thought that the setup for this movie was considerably more interesting than the payoff.
And here we go.
I felt genuine tension as I watched them build this conflict piece by piece. And I do think that the fear of the unknown very much factored into that. So it's probably best to go into this movie with as little information as possible. As you're watching it, you kind of feel like you know where it's going, but I think the movie does just enough to still keep you guessing. And to me, that is exactly what a compelling story is supposed to do. I actually thought that the cast of this film was phenomenal. Hugh Grant in particular absolutely owned his role. And dare I say, I think he deserves some kind of substantial recognition for his performance. Now, I know that award shows don't take horror films seriously in most instances, but I do feel like there's been a handful of instances in the genre this year alone that deserve to be recognized. And Hugh Grant as Mr. Reed is one of those instances.
You love me. You really love me.
Now obviously this is the type of role that we aren't necessarily accustomed to seeing him play, but beyond that, the guy just commands your attention in every single scene he's involved with. It was kind of amazing to see how he used his natural charm to disarm the audience as well as the characters in the movie. Only moments later for layers of his character to start to be slowly revealed. The next thing you know, he's going on these lengthy monologues about religion, board games, and Radiohead songs. And when it's time to be creepy, he flawlessly turns up the stoic, unhinged death stare to 11. Hugh Grant is allowed to show his range in this movie, and that could be considered somewhat unique for a villain like this.
I like it a lot.
Also, Sophie Thatcher plays one of the female missionaries trapped in this little game. And I don't know about anybody else, but I really felt like she was bringing some of that Anya Taylor-Joy energy to the screen. And it made me really want to see her in a lot more films moving forward. Plus, I also liked the fact that her character wasn't necessarily one note, and they also didn't go with the tired trope of her having this tragic backstory. There's a little bit of that there. She has some baggage for sure, but it always feels like she is at least somewhat in control. And she's kind of flexing her faith muscles as she goes toe-to-toe with Hugh Grant's character. If there was something negative that I needed to point out about this movie, I would say that there is some pacing issues. I enjoyed a lot of the philosophical talk, but there were times where the movie slowed down to a snail's pace and things got a little too pretentious. Some of the dialogue even felt a little bit too bloated at times, and like they were trying a bit too hard to get their point across.
I don't get it.
I have to say, I really enjoyed the setting of this movie, the house that the story mostly takes place in, but I did have a lot of questions as to how a structure like that comes into existence. The revelation of the film, while I do understand it and I see where they were going with it, I'm not entirely sure that they 100% stuck the landing for me. Obviously, they are presenting some pretty lofty ideas in this film, and there were certain aspects of the ending that felt a bit too on the nose for me. I guess I was expecting something less straightforward and a bit more thought-provoking for the finale, given how everything was set up. Bottom line, I enjoyed Heretic quite a bit. It's not what you would call a conventional horror film, and it's got a lot of big ideas. I'm not sure that necessarily all of them worked, but I do think it definitely did enough to make it worthy of a watch, and that's why I'm going to give Heretic the Pleased Palpatine.
Good.
Y'all be cool. Shut up.